we had to figure Islam out mostly on our own. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Islamic History Podcast YouTube channel. Today, I want to discuss Elijah Muhammad and how he is viewed by Black American Muslims. Most Muslims will agree that Elijah Muhammad's teachings were not in line with true Islam. But many Black Muslims actually have a positive view of Elijah Muhammad. So let's discuss who Elijah Muhammad was and why he is still a controversial figure half a century after his death. Elijah Muhammad was born as Elijah Poole on October 7, 1897 in Sandersville, Georgia. He grew up in a very poor but very religious Christian family. He moved to Detroit in 1923 as part of the Great Migration. The Great Migration was when millions of Black Americans moved from the rural South to northern and western cities like Chicago, Detroit, and New York. This was all to escape the economic hardships and the racial violence of the South at that time. In 1931, Elijah Poole met a man named Wallace Fard Muhammad. Wallace Fard Muhammad was an immigrant who had founded an organization called the Nation of Islam. Wallace Fard Muhammad taught that Black people came from the tribe of Shabazz and their true religion was Islam. Elijah Poole joined the Nation of Islam and changed his name to Elijah Muhammad. He became Fard Muhammad's #1 student and his right-hand man.
Not one place do you find in the gospel where Jesus said, I have found that lost sheep, and that I have restored him to his rightful place. Is that right? No, it's not there.
When Fard Muhammad disappeared in 1934, Elijah Muhammad took over leadership of the Nation of Islam. Now, when Elijah Muhammad took over in 1934, the Nation of Islam only had 3 temples and maybe 5,000 members. However, by the time he died in 1975, the Nation of Islam had 75 mosques and over 120,000 members. Now, there are many differences between the Nation of Islam and mainstream Islam. The most important differences are their beliefs, that is, the Nation of Islam's beliefs about Wallace Fard Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad. The Nation of Islam believes that Allah came to earth in the person of Wallace Fard Muhammad. This is not something I'm accusing them of. You can still find this belief on their website even today. The Nation of Islam also believes that Elijah Muhammad was a prophet of Allah. Now, if you try to argue this point with them and bring up the verse in the Quran where it states that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam of Arabia was the seal of the prophets, the Nation of Islam, or I'll say members of the Nation of Islam, they will play semantics and say that Elijah Muhammad was a messenger, but he was not a prophet. Now, from an Islamic perspective, this doesn't matter because all messengers were prophets, even though not all prophets were messengers. Now, there are other differences between the Nation of Islam and mainstream Islam, but they are relatively minor. These two beliefs that the Nation of Islam have, these are non-negotiable for most Muslims. The idea that Allah came down to earth in the person of Wallace Fard Muhammad, and the idea that Elijah Muhammad is a messenger or prophet of Allah, or whatever term they want to use. Now, Elijah Muhammad died on February 25, 1975, and his son, Wallace Muhammad, took over the Nation of Islam. Wallace Muhammad changed his name to Warithuddin Muhammad, and he began moving the Nation of Islam towards mainstream Islam. In this process, he changed the name of the organization many times, and by the mid-1980s, the Nation of Islam really no longer existed, and it was truly part of the global Muslim Ummah.
The fact is that the Western society has for long been studying Quran, Islamic knowledge, Islamic history, and extracting from it for their own benefit. That's right. That's the fact. And they call it secret order.
Of course, not everyone agreed with this transformation. Most notably, Louis Farrakhan left in 1978 to begin a new Nation of Islam based on Elijah Muhammad's original teachings. Most black people in the United States today have a positive attitude towards Elijah Muhammad. After all, he was a major figure during the civil rights movement, and the teachings he introduced helped to improve the lives of thousands of black Americans. Even Louis Farrakhan and the modern iteration of the Nation of Islam are highly regarded in the black community, even today, and especially in the inner city.
America is in the path of Sodom and Gomorrah, ancient Egypt, Babylon, and Rome. And at the core of this internal problem of America is the unwanted presence of nearly 30 to 40 million black people who didn't come on the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, or the Mayflower, but who came in the holds of ships.
Black American Muslims today, however, have varying opinions of Elijah Muhammad. Some have very positive opinions of him, while others have a very negative opinion of him. Generally speaking, those Muslims who are affiliated with Imam WD Muhammad, that is, WD Muhammad, that is the son of Elijah Muhammad, they generally tend to have more positive feelings towards Elijah Muhammad. Some of them still refer to him as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, even within that community, those Muslims who still admire Elijah Muhammad tend to be older Muslims who came through the Nation of Islam. Now, these older Muslims who still admire Elijah Muhammad, they do acknowledge that he wasn't teaching true Islam. There's no argument with that. But for them, joining the Nation of Islam was a major turning point in their lives. Elijah Muhammad's teachings was, for them, a positive force that truly improved their lives, and they will always have a positive feeling about that era. Now, other black American Muslims tend to have a more negative view towards Elijah Muhammad. You have to understand that for many years, the Nation of Islam was accused of being responsible for Malcolm X's assassination. We know that's not true today, but in the aftermath of Malcolm's death, there was a lot of conflict between the Nation of Islam and mainstream black Muslims. I do not believe that the Nation of Islam as an organization, nor Elijah Muhammad as an individual, were either directly or indirectly involved with Malcolm X's death. However, members of the Nation of Islam were involved in his killing. There is no doubt about that.
Are you not perhaps afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh, yes. I probably am a dead man already.
What do you mean?
When you understand the makeup of the Muslim movement and the psychology of the Muslim movement, as long as if I myself, by having confidence in the leader of the Muslim movement, if someone came to me and I had no knowledge whatsoever of what had taken place, and they told me what I'm saying, I would kill them.
Now, many black Muslims who were alive during that era have not forgotten that fact, and they still hold a negative feeling towards Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam because of that. Now, besides that, if you move the situation with Malcolm X aside and just focus on the religious part, there are also many black American Muslims who view Elijah Muhammad negatively for teaching a false version of Islam. They will say that despite whatever good he may have done, he was teaching shirk. He was associating something with Allah, and that is the greatest sin in Islam. Before we conclude, I want to give you a brief reminder. There were Muslims in the United States before the Nation of Islam existed. Now, most of these Muslims were immigrants, and they didn't bother to share Islam with the black Americans at that time. There were some exceptions, such as Sheikh Dawood Faisal in Brooklyn at State Street Masjid, but even he was a black man from Grenada. Now, I get it. The Muslim immigrants at that time were here for economic reasons and not for giving dawah. But their lack of giving dawah allowed groups like the Ahmadiyya and the Moorish Science Temple and the Nation of Islam to fill the void. Malcolm X even says something similar in his autobiography. This is all to say that as black American Muslims, we had to figure this thing out on our own. Whether it was sending our children overseas to study Islam, or going overseas ourselves to study Islam, or buying books, attending lectures, hiring Muslim tutors, we had to figure Islam out mostly on our own. Even today, most of the Muslims doing dawah in the inner city are black Muslims. And it's only by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we've come this far. This is a reminder to all Muslims of what could happen when we neglect to share the message of Islam. So, what are your opinions and thoughts on Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam? Let me know in the comments below, but please keep it respectful. Now, YouTube believes you would like this video to the left, but if you want to know why so many black men are leaving the church, check out this video on the right. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.